Well, we're moving ahead. This is Chapter 9, which deals with groups and teams, and the difference between those two things. In this particular chapter, we will talk about, among other things, the stages of group development. This may be a concept that you'll remember from Principles of Management, perhaps, but the kinds of things that all groups go through. If you're a part of teams, I'll encourage you as you're reading about this part, you're looking at the PowerPoint, you're watching the video, to think about the development of that team or that group across time, and think about how it looked in your group or in your team when you were going through these various stages. The next thing that we'll really spend a little bit of time about is the concept of cohesion, which is the idea that folks get along and they work well together and they're partners and they're working towards the same goals. And we'll talk about how the idea of cohesion, when it is accomplished, when it is achieved, really makes the difference in groups being able to perform. That groups that are very cohesive, that get along well, that see themselves as fellow contributors, get more done. The quality is higher. We will also see that one of the problems with cohesion is that the more comfortable we are with each other, the less we may engage in conflict, which will be the subject of the next chapter. The more we may just start saying, okay, yeah, I'll agree with that because you support it, and we don't necessarily have a lot of open discussion. So there are certainly a lot of benefits to cohesion, but there are also some drawbacks, and we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about within the group, the members of those groups, and how they interact with each other, and how in a lot of groups where we divvy up the tasks and we give each person certain things, how various teams and various projects require the members of the team to work together or to work parallel, to what degree they interact. So the concept that we would be talking about at that point is the interdependence of the members of the team. So we're looking, first of all, from the big picture of the team and what makes the team, and then we're kind of looking at the people within the team at this point. And then we kind of back up again to the overall team, and we talk about what makes a team effective. We talk about some of the barriers that prevent teams from being functional and accomplishing what they're supposed to accomplish, and how we can get around those barriers, whether it be addressing conflict by removing members of the team that are creating conflict or whatever it is. But then what we can do to make sure that our teams are effective. So in this segment of the class, in this unit of the class, we've got the same components that we always do. We've got the PowerPoint that'll be available as soon as you submit to this Dropbox. We'll have the video for the lecture, which in this case is a little over 27 minutes long. You've got the summary that you'll do. I'll encourage you to think back about the video, about what you've read, and rather than summarize the highlights of the chapter, really pinpoint 2 or 3 things that kind of stood out to you. Maybe this is something that I hadn't really thought of before, or this is the new concept. Maybe you look at something that you have noticed in your life before. I was part of a team and we seem to be fighting all the time, and well, this kind of explains it. And I had a person that I worked with at the hospital a number of years ago that I did a session similar to this, trying to help their managers grow as managers. And we talked about these stages and about storming. And after the session was over, she came up and she said, the light bulb went off. We've been storming for years. And I wondered why we didn't get anything done. That may be the kind of thing that you talk about in your summary. And you may, certainly will want to say, you know what, I can take this particular concept of all these things, these 20 things that we talked about, I can see where I can take this one in particular and use it tomorrow at work, or use it next week, or whatever. That's what I want you to talk about. We've also got the standard 10-question quiz. And then when it's all done, there are 3 assessments that deal with your preference on working in groups, how well you work in groups, those kinds of things. Assessment 21, Assessment 22, Assessment 23. This particular chapter does not have any phone calls. It does not have any exams. So when you get done with Assessment 23 and I post the grade for that, you'll move on into Chapter 10. Hope things are going well, and that the home life is settling down a little bit, and that you're enjoying what you're learning.